Now, last night, the amazing happens, and the Washington Capitals are your Stanley Cup champions. And I don't know how many times I can say that before it doesn't sound weird. But let's look at Braden Holtby. Why am I looking at Braden Holtby? Because Braden Holtby's career was kind of up for grabs about 6 weeks ago. Going into the playoffs against Columbus, their starter was Grubauer. Most people were okay with that. There were some Caps fans that were like, wait a minute, why isn't it Holtby? And the rest of us were saying he just wasn't playing well enough. Now, I remember Braden Holtby coming into the team here. He played 14 games in 2010, 2011, 10 wins, 2 losses, 1.79 goals against, 934 save percentage. And coming out of that year, I was like, why isn't he their starter? And then he got buried because Washington's always been a team overflowing with young goaltenders. 7 games in 2011, 2012, 4 wins, 2 losses, 1 overtime loss, 2.50 goals against, 921 save percentage. And this was when he earned his job in the NHL. He played 14 games in the playoffs, 1.95 goals against, and a 935 save percentage. There was no sending him back to the minors after that performance. None. No complaints from him that I ever heard about a lack of ice time or a lack of chances coming up to that. 2012, 2013, he plays 36 games. Remember, this is the lockout shortened season. So it was only 48 games long. 23 wins, 12 losses, 1 overtime loss. 2.58 goals against, 920 save percentage. 7 games in the playoffs, 2.22 goals against, and a 922 save percentage. 2013-14, the team misses the playoffs, but he had 23 wins, 15 losses, and 4 overtime losses, 2.85 goals against, 915 save percentage. But now he's settling into being an average goaltender-ish, average-ish. 14-15, which is before the one I just put the asterisk next to, 73 games played, 41 wins, 20 losses, 10 overtime losses, 2.22 goals against, 923 save percentage. In the playoffs, lights out. 13 games, 1.71 goals against, and a 944 save percentage. I didn't put up the wins and losses in the playoffs because it doesn't really matter because they didn't make it out of the second round in any of the rounds he played in. So looking at wins and losses in the playoffs doesn't make a difference. And it's not the point I'm trying to make here. 15-16, he wins the Vezina. That's the asterisk. 48 wins in the 66 games he played. He led the league in wins that year. 9 losses, 7 overtime losses, 2.20 goals against, 922 save percentage. In the playoffs, 12 games played, 1.72 goals against, and a 942 save percentage. So again, the Capitals don't get out of the second round. It's not Holtby's fault. Holtby's standing on his head. The Capitals are getting shut down. Last year, things kind of change. He gets 42 wins, 13 losses, 6 overtime losses, 2.07 goals against, 925 save percentage. 925 save percentage. Actually has better numbers in the regular season. They still win the President's Trophy as the number 1 team in the league. Playoffs, he plays 13 games, 2.47 goals against, 909 save percentage. And that's where, and I think we're going to have to revisit this now. With the Capitals, there was always kind of this feeling, any player or any time that the team would do well of, yeah, but where's it going to fall apart? And I think there was some waiting for that with Braden Holtby. And I would hear people talking about, oh, he's kind of overrated. If I ever asked the question which goalie in the league's most overrated, Holtby would come up regularly. So this year, he plays 54 games. Grubauer kind of steals his job down the stretch. 34 wins, 16 losses, 4 overtime losses, 2.99 goals against, and a 907 save percentage. Those are bad numbers. Absolutely. And I'm not going to try to gloss those over. Those are not great numbers. Holtby did not have a great regular season. But see, there was something that I said the last 2 years when they crapped out in the playoffs, which was maybe if they don't go at it so hard the whole season and don't bother with the whole President's Trophy and just win enough to get in the playoffs, and if you get home ice, great. Just pace yourself. I'm not trying to say Braden Holtby was pacing himself. But in the playoffs, this team definitely looked fresher. They definitely looked like a team that enjoyed being the underdog. Look at their road record in the playoffs. 10 wins on the road in the playoffs tells you they enjoy being the underdog. 23 games played in the playoffs this year by Holtby, 2.16 goals against, 922 save percentage, and Don Cherry stating that he should have been the Conn Smythe winner. I won't argue that. I think Holtby in these playoffs kind of was a throwback. He reminded me of a lot of goaltenders from the 80s with better numbers. But in that, yeah, he'd allow a goal here and there, but when you needed that save, he got it for you. When the game was on the line, he didn't break, and he didn't he didn't give in, where he may have in the past. So while his numbers in this year's playoffs weren't nearly as good as 2 years ago or 3 years ago, he seemed more mature, more calm. Even last night, you look at they challenge a goal by Vegas that Perron's behind him in the net, and he clearly thinks it's goalie interference, and I don't blame him for feeling that way. I think it was a good goal. But Braden Holtby 3 years ago, he is PO'd about that. The whole Capitals team's losing their mind about that. When it's announced a good goal, they had a camera on him, and he just kind of, and he mumbles something to himself and puts his mask back on and goes back to work. I don't know where Braden Holtby's going to end up fitting in terms of all-time greats. Because that's the question, right, is with this performance, with the Stanley Cup now on his resume, and if they can get to another one, where does he stand? Does he end up getting into that Hall of Fame talk? He's already got 225 wins, which isn't bad considering the amount of time he's been in the league isn't really that long. He's got a lot of years left. He's got 2 more years at $6.1 million, which is a bargain now for what they're getting because they've got a Stanley Cup. He only has 89 regulation losses in all those games he's played. And in the playoffs, just to examine how far we've come. First off, a goalie's name has to end with Y to play against the Capitals. They beat Bobrovsky in the first round, Murray in the second round, Vasilevsky in the third round, and Fleury in the finals. So when you're looking for why Winnipeg didn't get to the finals, it's because Hellebuck didn't match the scheme. I'm on to you, NHL. But all things considered, you've got a Vezina winner here. You've got a 2-time Stanley Cup winner here. You've got a potential Vezina winner this year right here. And a guy with 3 Stanley Cup rings here. So there wasn't a single goaltender that you can say was up against the Capitals this year who wouldn't have been considered pretty darn good. And at the start of a series, you wouldn't have given the edge to the other team. Maybe in the conference finals against Vasi, you could have argued, Holtby's a little better. You could have argued that. But if I had argued going into the series against Pittsburgh, hey, Holtby's better than Murray, I don't know how I would have backed that up. I'm not sure I could have backed that up. And going into the finals, definitely, with Fleury, the way he had played up until the finals, it was a team effort, but Holtby deserves a lot of credit. He really does. And it'll be interesting to see what they do next year, because of course now there's all this talk about, well, are they going to trade Grubauer? What would they get for Grubauer if they trade him? Is this Russian kid going to be their backup? Maybe. I would think you take the Russian kid, Samsonov, and you stick him in the American League as a starter for a year. You keep Grubauer for a year, and just make sure that this kid's going to turn out. And then there's the other awkward part of the conversation. Holtby's not old. So if you're bringing in a kid who can replace him, okay. But Holtby's only been a starter in the NHL for 5 years. He's not an old guy. He is born in 1989, so yeah, he's not even 30 yet. So yeah, there's no rush to bring a new goaltender into Washington. And it's funny because 6 weeks ago before the playoffs, yeah, I could have argued, they'll sign Samsonov, and Samsonov's probably going to end up pushing out Holtby. Now, he's got a Stanley Cup. I would think he has godlike status in Washington right now. So there you go. Braden Holtby, I just figured I'd do a little video on him this morning because he was kind of he wasn't talked about very much throughout the playoffs. We were all talking about Ovi and Kuznetsov, and understandably, and we were always talking about the goaltenders that he was against. He had a good playoff. I don't think he had to be fantastic throughout these playoffs, but you know what? When you needed the save, he was there. And that's a compliment that was thrown at Grant Fuhr most of his career. You look at Grant Fuhr's numbers; his numbers were never very good up until the end of his career, and he got better. But when you needed a big save, he was there, and that's why he's a Hall of Famer. That's why, and people can say, "Oh, well, because he played in Edmonton." Touche, but Edmonton's defense was also kind of crap because they were busy scoring over 400 goals a year, so they didn't really worry about defense. And Holtby right now reminds me of Fuhr, the 2010s version, basically, of Grant Fuhr. The numbers are better, the defense is better, but it's that same idea of, well, we're going to allow our share of goals, but when we need the save, Braden will be there. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.